Welcome, everyone. I am so excited today because this is a Front Office Rocks webinar, which we do on a regular basis once a month for our clients. But we had an amazing opportunity to bring on who I consider a rock star when it comes to helping me with practice management with the office, but then also helping me with Eaglesoft. And not only am I excited about that, but this is our highest attended webinar thus far. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. So welcome to Front Office Rocks webinar. And I would love to introduce you to Andre. Andre, welcome and thanks for coming and joining with us today.
Hey, buddy. It's good to see you. This is exciting. We haven't seen each other for a while.
I know, right? I think the last time was when we were at Zero World or something a couple of years ago, maybe.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you guys don't know Andre, I'm going to introduce him a little bit, let him tell us a little bit more about his background, and then we're going to geek out on Eaglesoft today. We're not going to necessarily just talk about Eaglesoft. We're going to talk about, reports and schedule and things and how it applies to your office. But we're using Eaglesoft as our platform because both he and I are Eaglesoft users. He's my guru that I go to for Eaglesoft. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And the emojis, I love them, or the Bitmojis, because Andre is the king of emojis. He made us his own with Front Office Rocks because he's a great supporter of Front Office Rocks. And then I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. So I heard you're not, though, Andre.
Oh, I don't watch sports at all. So I'm a fan of whoever I'm in the stands for at the moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I guess the Eagles are doing well. But I couldn't tell you anything about sports.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I'll be the sports fan in the group here.
There you go.
All right, so if you guys don't know Andre at this point, Andre has an amazing group that I send everybody to on Facebook, and it's called Andre's Field Guide, which is a group that you started just for Eaglesoft users to help, practice management software is great, but if you're not using 100% of it or most of it, there's a lot of the software that we can learn and use in our practices. So Andre started the Field Guide. How long ago did you start this group on Facebook, Andre?
It's been less than a year.
Oh my gosh.
And I started this as a way for my coaching clients to, talk when I wasn't available, get ideas about Eaglesoft. And it went from about 50 people to a couple hundred people in a couple of weeks. And then everybody wanted to get on. So it just blew up. It's crazy now.
Well, I think I might have been one of your biggest cheerleaders because I put one out and I remember in like a week or two, you got a ton of the Front Office rock stars on your. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background and why are you an Eaglesoft guru? Why are you the guy I go to for Eaglesoft?
Well, honestly, the Eaglesoft came about because the practice that I worked in, my brother-in-law's practice, we decided back in the late 90s that we wanted to go paperless. It's really chartless. And we bought Eaglesoft. We were one of the first users of Eaglesoft. And at that time, they didn't have technology advisors. They had trainers, but you had to pay for them and they were independent contractors. So we chose to train ourselves. And I dug into the software just because I had to find a way to take our practice chartless. And I learned everything I could learn about it and dug into it. And later, after I retired, became a trainer. Yeah, retired. Yeah, I'm still retired. I call it untired. But I just learned as much as I could about it. I figured out all the workarounds because, again, I didn't have a manual to go by. I just had my own sort of way of digging through the software. And I just found any way I could to eke out the best that I could of the software. So a lot of it is, shared ideas. A lot of the information I got from other trainers, from other users. And I just pushed the envelope with it. So, it was really all about finding a way to make the best of the software.
Awesome. And that's kind of, I've done some YouTube videos because I also found like the software is great, but to learn it and to make it work for your practice, you have to really understand it and kind of do some workarounds sometimes. We want enhancements and stuff, but it doesn't always work for the practice. So I think that's great. And I love that. And I have on here, I pulled this image off of your group because somebody just asked, the name of the group is Andre's Eaglesoft Field Guide. And when I pulled this image off, it says 1,500 members strong. But what did you say you're at now at this point?
It's got to be close to 2,500 members now. Usually it's about 50 to 75 new members a week joining. So I can't keep track. It's just growing. I just know my phone never stops ringing.
Nice. And you know what I love about it is that you show real images and how to do things, and then you can refer back to it. So you have the data there. Like if somebody needs to know something now, you've probably already answered it and can refer them to the answer when they need it. And if you haven't answered it, you're super good. I mean, I know, what is it? What day of the week? Thursday or something? You're data mining? Yeah.
Every day, there's got to be, I try to come up with a topic every day, and you got to remember, I'm in an office almost every day, a dental office every day, working with somebody, but every day I'm trying to find something new to show everybody something new.
I think it's great. As a trainer, I love that because I think it's important to have that. So what we're going to talk about today, and I just want to point out, he also loves to play with images and stuff. So that's if you're familiar with that, home screen, when you log in, he did a nice little picture of me up there and made it special for Front Office Rocks. We're saying that Front Office Rocks should be integrated into your support too. But we're going to talk about today, we just kind of picked some topics that we thought were ones that get talked about a lot, ones that Andre could help us with. And so we picked today the topics being, we're going to talk about scheduling. He's going to go over scheduling with us, the patient analysis report, what we're looking for, what it means, and Telecare Alerts, which I believe is kind of just specific to Eaglesoft, right? That's not in other software, I don't think.
No, Telecare is specific to Eaglesoft, yes. Okay.
Then we're going to talk about charting. And then if we have time at the end, this webinar is going to go about an hour, we'll open it up to questions. So just so everybody's clear, we're going to start with scheduling. As he's going through each one of these subjects, if you have questions on scheduling, what I'm going to do is monitor the attendee chat. So over on the left, you can ask questions. And if it's specific on scheduling, just to keep him on track, I will ask along the way. If it's on another subject than scheduling or the patient analysis report or Telecare Alerts or charting, I'm going to save it to the end. But we do guarantee that no matter what, we're going to get your questions answered. So at the end of this, if we run out of time, because we can geek out on Eaglesoft for way more than an hour, that my team will get you the answers, or Andre is going to get you the answers. And we're going to get you connected to both of us so that way we can help you guys, because we know what it's like to be in a practice. Know the software should be able to help you and not know how to find the answer. Can't always get it from support, and that's why we're here. So at this point, Andre, I'm going to let you take over. So if you want to, we're going to shut down we don't need to see you guys don't need to see us anymore. So we're going to stop our webcams, and then Andre is going to take over and share his screen with Eaglesoft. And then again, what I need you guys to do is, if you have questions on the subjects as we're going through, please type them in. And then if at the end there's other questions, I'll make sure that I get them asked to Andre. So Andre, we're all yours.
And you can see my screen okay now?
Yep, I can see your screen and your face down there in the support.
Well, as Laura said, I love digging into Eaglesoft. And, usually what happens is, I hear everybody's frustration, and I hear them say, Eaglesoft can't do something, and my motto is, yes, it can. You just have to figure out a way to make it happen. So a lot of it is all about finding a way to make what you want happen. And for me, it's all about digging into the software to make it work a little bit differently, not better, but differently. So let's start talking about scheduling first. So let's click on my schedule. Oh, and one thing, let's talk about this. The virtual front desk screen that you see now. What's very important about this virtual front desk is only the front desk should be on the front desk. If we're a clinical user, we should be on the clinical screen. And this clinical screen gives you everything you could possibly need from a clinical standpoint. So to get to my schedule, I'm going to click this box up here, which on most people's screen looks like a schedule, and open up my schedule. So,
Andre, let me ask you a quick question about that, because I also know there's the, what do they call that other version where you can see just the boxes and not the images? The integrated?
Yeah, and honestly, this integrated mode, I don't know that I have ever used this. And like I said, I've been using Eaglesoft since it started. Well, no, this was the only screen that was years ago. But you can tell by the quality of the graphics how long ago this was used. Yeah. I have one office that I work with that uses this screen. Other than that, I kind of force people to use either the practice management screen or the clinical screen.
And I used to use that. That's why I asked that. I forced that on my team because I wanted them to go to any computer and have the exact same screen to go to. But then I realized how user-friendly these screens are. So if anybody happens to be using that, that's why I wanted to point it out.
Oh, yeah.
The thing I love about Eaglesoft is it's so user-friendly versus some of the other. You just point and click. I want this or that. So that's why I just wanted to point that out, why you'd want to use this version.
And you'll see me post all the time. I have the same answer sometimes for all these questions. And sometimes you'll see me post the same thing. When you're driving to the beach, I don't care which direction you go, as long as you wind up at the beach. Right. So no matter how it is in Eaglesoft, if you want to get there, it doesn't matter. Now, if you're going to the Atlantic Ocean and you're driving west, that's when I'm going to stop you and tell you there's a better way to get there.
Yeah.
So that's the only time I ever have a hiccup where I say, no, we have to do it a little differently.
Yeah.
So let's look at the schedule. And, one of the things, let's go back to a blank day to just talk about how the schedule is laid out. One of the most important things about the schedule is, think about these columns not as chairs, but as the providers who are sitting in those chairs. You can see in my example, I actually have them named. My OCD makes me actually give them numbers so that they're in sequential order. So that's just a little bit how I work. But you can see my closed time is in gray, my open time's in white. But I also have these color bands going down the side that let me actually schedule procedures, kind of like we've talked about in most offices about block scheduling. I don't block schedule my restorative chairs. I block schedule my hygiene chairs. So that's just a little bit of part of how I do things. But the nice thing about this is if anybody's used Eaglesoft, you know that when you double click on an appointment, it starts off as a recall visit. The reason Eaglesoft did that is because that is the most commonly scheduled procedure, which is the recall. So what tends to happen is you schedule an appointment here and you've got to change that. Well, if you work the way I work, I set my restorative chairs up so that if I double click, it starts off always as a restorative appointment. And it just saves me a click.
Right.
So little things like that can make make the schedule actually work a little faster.
Now, for the columns, the colors on the side, you've set that up in it's called Perfect Day, correct?
It's scheduling templates. So I'll show people where that is. So it's we have to do it for the front desk. So it's under List, on Schedule, and there's a template designer. And you actually go in and, again, here's another way of thinking. We're not paperless, we're chartless. I go through and just on a regular calendar, I'll lay out my week and kind of figure out how I want it to look. So I actually create it, and you use the term, a perfect hygiene day. And I actually set that up, how I want my day to go from top to bottom.
Got it.
Yep.
Now, one of the things that because I'm going to battle back and forth a little bit with you, which is the fun part about this. The thing I have that also, and I love that. The only thing that I wish is, so if I want to just have a primary appointment or just a new patient in a certain spot, you can schedule anything you want in those, even though you've got it set up by the color code. Yep. So for me, when I want to make sure somebody doesn't schedule something in a spot, I'll go ahead and put a block in there and say, new patient only or primary only or meeting, because it is easy to schedule over those, even though those colors are there.
I agree with you, and that I wish that was something that we could have here.
Yeah.
It's the difference between getting a warning that something shouldn't be done there and having something that's stopping somebody from doing it.
Exactly.
That's a staffing issue that we fight on a daily basis. But yeah, I'm with you 300% on that one.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and the nice thing is once we have these colors set up, they represent exactly the procedures that I'm scheduling here. So here's a good view of my typical schedule in Andre world, how a day would look. And a couple things that I like to point out is this gold color here are my new patients. And you can see that I actually schedule my new patients 10 minutes early, so that when I'm using something like Revenue Well to call my patients, and I've been telling them to come 10 minutes early to fill out paperwork, guess what? Revenue Well is not going to call them and tell them to come in at the top of the hour when I actually had them scheduled. So I actually force the issue by scheduling them 10 minutes early.
Smart. I like that.
Yeah. So just little things that, that help to schedule out. So this is something that most people don't look at. Very top of the screen, and I hope that doesn't get cut off in the webinar, but at the very top of the screen, I can see that this office has scheduled $20,000 out of their goal of 11.6. And a lot of people don't even realize that that's there, but that's what those two numbers mean. That's what I have scheduled. That's my goal. Now, these are gross numbers, meaning, not insurance write-off after those kind of things, but these are our gross production numbers.
Right.
And a lot of people miss that.
And you can go in and customize what you want that number to be. So based off of the providers that you have working that goal, I mean, whether you have a set goal every day or you have a set goal based off of how many providers you have, and then you know what you're scheduling up against, what your goal is.
Yep. And you can see that by looking at the month at a glance, all right, and then drilling into the numbers. So I only have 1 day of people scheduled here, but I can see my goal. If I double click, I can see what it breaks out for each provider and based on their goal.
I love that. So one of the things that I use that for is when I know, and I've got somebody in front of me that needs a primary appointment, a crown or a bridge or something, I'm looking through those days to try to find a day that we're short against our goal and see if I can get the patient to schedule on that day so that we can meet our goal for the day. That's
perfect. I love that idea. So let's take a look at some of the other things that are here. This is the view that I'd have at the front desk and be able to look at it as a total view. But there's actually a views button up at the top of the screen, or for those people who like to right click on schedule views. And then I've got a couple of views here. So if I just want to see, if you have one doctor who says, I just need to see what I do in a day and maybe the hygienist that I work with. So I have a single doctor view that I can drill down to. So same exact schedule, but now what I've done is just limited the scope of what I'm looking at. So now I'm looking at one doctor and the two hygienists that doctor works with. And then I can also have my clinical view, which is one of my favorites. And this gives me a HIPAA compliant view. And I just have first names and what they're coming in for. So this is a view especially like a PAN station or something where there's a computer that's available in the hallway that patients might be able to see. This gives me a view that I don't have patients' full names. All right. We have that.
We call that our consultation view. So anytime that you're potentially talking to a patient, you always click to the consult view to protect the privacy.
That's the best in the whole world. And a couple other things you can see. There's a quick. I'm going to go back to my other view though, so I don't have my pop-ups. You can see this patient Claire Dunphy right here has these double arrows. All right. What that is anything that you put inside the prefix field, which I'm going to open up Phil's appointment here. Anything you put in this prefix field will actually put arrows around it. So let's save that. All right. So what I use this to represent is somebody who has an appointment both in the hygiene op and in the restorative op. So I can tell them going back and forth. Just, that field's been there for years and most people don't use it. So, leave it to me to use it.
I train it on, and I love this conversation. I would love people to put comments or come on your page and talk about it, because I know a lot of offices adapt it according to what works for their office. I've seen a lot of offices use it for the initial of the person who initially scheduled the appointment, because if you change it, it looks like it was changed and adapted, but at least you know who the original person was to schedule it.
Well, now it also depends on if people are sharing workstations.
Yes, that's the problem, right? When you log in.
Yeah, but I always look at this scheduled by and last modified by. Now, the issue with the last modified is if I go in here and I say, oh, that's right, I wanted to make sure to call that person, I take a little note here, it's going to say that I modified it, even though I just added a note. So, it's a little hairy to think that this was actually either modified by somebody or just added to by somebody. So
and that's where you would learn that you're supposed to log out and log in every time you sit down at a computer. But realistically, in dental offices, that doesn't happen all the time. So that's where you got to try to figure these workarounds out.
Yeah, and I think we need to caution people that at some point that's probably going to happen where you get up from your computer and it automatically logs you out because for HIPAA reasons, it's a good idea. I mean, there isn't a hospital around that the computers don't log the nurses out when they walk away from them. So it's coming. It's coming. Mm-hmm. So tell me some of the other things that you want to see in the schedule that are like the fun stuff.
I think, how about where you can move the schedule around, where you can move the dock the stations, or you can show on the right. Like I just love customizing to make it work for me.
Yeah. And one of the things, I was in an office yesterday and they still have the smaller, like almost 15-inch monitors at their workstations. And I was like, oh boy, I wish you guys had widescreen monitors so you can see a lot more real estate, because it is so nice to be able to pick this data glance or this, this calendar up and drop it down to the bottom of the screen and have almost a full year at the bottom that you can jump through. To be able to go through my schedule quickly like that is amazing, to be able to do that. And all you do is just grab the blue bar, pick it up, and sort of drop it where you want on these little sort of real estate holders. All right. And then I've got my appointment queue, and I can lock it in if I want. All right. So you can have whatever you want, kind of almost all these choices up at the top. You can actually move around your quick fill. All right. If you use your quick fill a lot, you can drop that onto your screen. And you can make the schedule your own.
Yep.
Right. And that is workstation specific.
I was going to say, and then you want to save the views so that if you get something set up that you love, then you can save it and then you can go to it like that all the time, right?
Yep. Yeah.
We have a question. Yeah. Do you use the notes panel? And if so, what's that for? Schedule notes panel.
Well, I don't use schedule notes because most of the notes that I'm going to put on my schedule, like Laura was saying, I'm putting in as blocks. I don't know if you do the same thing, Laura, but I don't use the schedule notes as much as I would put notes into a block. And one thing that's really kind of fun is if I do a note, and hopefully everybody knows that you can do this, I can go right to notes here. All right. But if I put in here lunch and learn. All right, so Patterson's coming in for a lunch and learn with us. And if I learned how to spell, that'd be even better. So I do a lunch and learn, but the rep gives me a credit card or something like that. Well, if I put the credit card number in this field, I make this an hour. All right. So I can see that to lunch and learn, but until I rest my mouse, all right, and I turned off the pop-ups. Right. Yeah. But if I rest my mouse, I can see that credit card number popping through. So, good example, doctor's going out for a doctor's appointment at lunch, and you can say, doctor not available, but down here you can say, doctor's getting a colonoscopy, don't forget him to take his prep. Right. So, it's nice to be able to have those, and that's how I do my notes on my day, and not with the schedule notes. They're just too hard to find.
Now, I'm going to say I'm the biggest advocate, I think, for putting in blocks where you have lunch shown right there. One of the things that I do is I actually block for lunches so that we can move our lunches up or down according to how to maximize the schedule. So the rule is between for example, in our office, the hygienist can go to lunch anywhere between 11 and 2. So we can move the block up or down to get a new patient in, or if somebody's running behind. But we don't want to do lunch at 9, but we want to give them some flexibility. So I block for lunches. I block for team meetings. I put out a year in advance for all our team meetings, because if you don't block it, it's going to get scheduled.
I'm with you. Yeah, yesterday I worked with an office, and this was something that that I was always told could never be done in an office or done in Eaglesoft. I actually worked out the ability to do 2 lunches in a day.
Oh, wow.
And again, this was something that I was told could not be done, that, because I have a lot of offices that are open a really long day, and they might have 2 swing shifts. And, the hygienist in that operatory has a dinner break. And I was always told it couldn't be done. And it took me 10 years, but I figured out how I could get 2 lunches in a day. So that is another way that we've been able to put in huddles. I worked in an office yesterday in California to be able to put huddles in the morning. Now we listed it just as lunch because we can't change the title of that, but now we actually put the huddle time in the morning. That's so great. There's a couple ways of doing a lot of workarounds, but I love the ability to put the blocks in and put them where you want. That's the best.
And based off of the amount of time we have, we're not going to show you how to do all of this. But the one thing that I love when I first started with Eaglesoft, so I'm an Eaglesoft user that converted to Dentrix, or started with Dentrix after that, and then went back to Eaglesoft. So I've been on both sides. I love customizing the toolbar at the top to make it work best so we have what we call as a front office toolbar, because when we first get it in Eaglesoft, it's like all these little codes and pictures and you don't know what they mean. So we've set up, a front office toolbar like you have here, that's the things that we need to see, what we need access to fast. We did make a copy of it, and I'm sure Andre can help people with that, so that sometimes Eaglesoft will have glitches, as we all know, and it'll go back to the original toolbar. And so now whenever that happens, we can just paste in the toolbar that we set up. So do you have any other thoughts about toolbar up there?
Oh, I'm with you. And I do this all the time when I'm training new users. Well, I don't work with new users now, but in the past when I was working with new users, I would change this, because if you're coming from Soft and you're coming from PracticeWorks or something like that, sometimes the terminology is different. So instead of account, we might change this to ledger. So it works better for you.
Yeah.
So, you can, again, customize it, go in here and actually rename this whatever you want, just to make your life easier.
Yep. Another trick that you can change, like you've got up there, how many days forward, how many days backwards do you want to go, depending on what kind of an office you are. Also, can you show the provider view versus the,
so you go from appointments to provider. So and this is my, sometimes this will freak people out, or sometimes they're already using this view. I mean, I never use this view other than to verify that my providers are in the right columns. But if you look at this view, and especially if you look at this first patient up here, all right, so to explain how this is set up for this office, this is actually a nurse anesthetist that's going to be there for the whole time, that light pink. That is the doctor doing the procedure. That is an EFTA, an expanded function dental assistant, working at the office, and then the doctor's back. The EFTA's back here again, and then the doctor comes in to finish up the appointment. But the nurse anesthetist is scheduled for the entire procedure.
So for those that are listening that might not know what we're talking about or what he just did, in the front, we use this, and actually we use this in the practice. In the front, we go by appointment view, because we want to know, do we have the right appointments in, is it a new patient coming in, or is it a prophy? Is it a primary appointment? Is it an emergency? So we go by this view. Yep. With the providers, our providers use the provider view, because they want to make sure that for example, our hygienist, they want to make sure that the patient is going to be walked out under them as the provider, and that the doctor doing the exam was the right doctor. So they use the provider view in the back, and we use the appointment view in the front.
Yeah, and this is a great view every morning that you could take a look at. And I'll give you an example. Let's just take this patient and imagine they were originally scheduled with the wrong hygienist. Let's just put Barbara in there and save that. In this view, quickly auditing the schedule, we can see that that's a purple patient. That shouldn't be there. That should be an all yellow column for Phyllis.
And I make that a part of our providers to double check that, because when you walk out under the wrong provider, you're at the end of the day, you're trying to do end of day reports, and then they walk up and go, oh, it got walked out under the wrong hygienist, and you got to go change things. And so that's one of the things that I have my clinicians do, is make sure that those colors are right when they come in.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this in a little while, but one of the things that really works well is to do that in conjunction with a custom Telecare. So if you notice this little yellow icon right there, well, that is for my Dr. Yellen, all right, and that's her color, all right, and I can tell that yellow icon matches the patients, because we have a doctor preference. I want to be able to see that go down that list. This doctor is orange, that matches his color, and that doctor is gray, and they don't match. But but it's a quick, easy way to be able to see if the patient's scheduled with the right provider too. Right.
Now, while we're there, since we don't seem to have a lot of questions and we've got to watch the time, let's go ahead and talk about Entelecare Alerts next. But I do want to point out, for me, Entelecare Alerts are awesome. I found them to be a little bit hard to set up. And if there's too many Telecare Alerts, or your team's not used to looking at them, you have to really retrain them. So that was I love Telecare Alerts, but it definitely is an implementation training issue if you're going to use them. So
I agree.
Show us more about
it also depends too. I mean, I was in a pedo practice yesterday, and if you've got 10 Entelecares and a 15-minute appointment, you don't see anything. So, you really have to be aware of how many Entelecares you can put onto a screen, and what's important. Less is more sometimes. So in my setup here, I've got 2 Entelecares that I almost always have, universally have, which this red icon lets me know that the patient needs to be reviewed for a full series or pan. And the green one lets me know that they need to be reviewed for bite wings. All right. And again, it doesn't mean they need them. It doesn't mean they have to have them. It means that we should take a look and see if they have it. So my red one shows up if a patient hasn't had a full series 1 PAN in 36 months or 60 months, whichever the office's clinical criteria is. And the green one shows up in 12 months or 6 months, whatever the clinical criteria for bite wounds are. So those things are automatic. And that's those two show up. I've got my typical birthday that shows up if it's within 2 weeks of the patient's birthday. I've got a 4-month show up if they're on a 4-month recall or a 3-month recall. And then in some instances, I will use something like an insurance indicator. This patient has MetLife. You might see a United Concordia or something like that on my schedule.
So just so you guys know, I know that Andre's getting questions. He's popping up and I see them too. We're going to try to get to them. Yep. So he's not ignoring you. We're just going to stay focused and we'll come back to those. And you know, one of the things, a small thing I did, Andre, is we have an alert and I forgot exactly what it's called, but I think it's something insurance. Red flag insurance is what we call it. Okay. So if for patients that have, you know, that insurance that says, yeah, we'll pay 100% of a pro fee, but that allowed amount is like $8, or they have a year waiting period on everything. We have a red flag insurance pop up and it does an Telecare alert and my picture is a skunk. And basically that means their insurance that stinks. And the reason I do that is because then anytime any of my employees are in a conversation with a patient about their insurance, they're very, 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 very careful on what they say is or isn't potentially going to be covered, because they know that that's one of those pain insurances that's not going to be great. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with the Telecare Alerts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And like you said, the most important thing is, you know, it has to be, you know, it has to be effective in looking at it because otherwise there's just going to be noise.
Yeah.
We really have to get them.
Can you tell us the difference between then what an alert is and what an Telecare alert is?
So perfect example would be a patient alert would be something like the patient can't lay back in the chair or make sure to call paratransit to pick this patient up. That's different than something that we could trigger through an intelligent alert. So like my bite wings, it's an if this, then that. So if a patient hasn't had a 272, a 274, or a 210, then we get an alert. So if the computer can come up with the alert on its own, that's an Entelechy. If if it's something we have to add on our own, that would be a patient alert.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so you guys know Andre has in his group, he's got to have information about Telecare Alert, so of how to set them up and what he recommends. So I definitely make sure by the end of this, everybody should be part of the group if they're not already, because you give such great knowledge when it comes to that.
Cool.
Perfect.
And let's just take this Telecare and go back to where we kind of started with these screens. So if I go back to my clinical screen, and let's put a patient in the chair. So let's just select a patient. Let's put this top patient in the chair. One of the things you'll notice about my screen is I didn't get any pop-ups, but what I did get is my Entelecares down here. And now I can immediately see the Entelecares for my x-rays showed up, my Entelecare for my birthday showed up. But what also showed up are alerts, patient alerts, which we just talked about, based on the medical history. So this patient has a hearing impairment. They can't have epi. All right, they have United Concordia or Blue Shield. All right, they're due for periocharting. So I can tie these things so that I can utilize this screen in a better way. So it's a couple different ways of looking at it. But I love my Entelecares on my schedule. But you said the same patient was on the schedule, but having epi as a scheduling issue is not a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There was a question about how to set up Telecare Alerts. What I'm going to recommend is at the end of this, either Andre or I can get in touch with you or get you to the group, because you do really have to understand it. It's not something that we can do in 5 minutes to show you how to go in and do it, but there's plenty of information out there about it. So we'll definitely get you guys the link to show you how to set up the Telecare Alerts. What we wanted you to know is basically why you would want to and how important they are in your schedule and in the chart.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Can we just, based off of time, why don't we jump now? Do you want to go to charting next, since we're in the clinical part of it, and then we'll finish up with patient analysis?
So let's take a look at, now Eaglesoft has basic charting that you can use. All right. Now, the number one question I get when it comes to charting is, how can I see the difference between a composite and an amalgam? And usually my comeback is because I don't have a better answer. Why do you need to know that? Usually it's because, we want to see that we placed a composite over an amalgam. But I think maybe 10% of the doctors that we work with on a regular basis do amalgams now. So why is it that we want to see this difference? If you placed it, more than likely it's a composite. So one of the things that we could do is, I'm going to grab a patient here who I know has no charting done. I'm going to open up her chart. We're going to start with a blank chart here. So one of the things, ignore the fact that I've customized my chart to look a little different than the norm, but let's just grab a tooth and let's go to our amalgam button, and we're going to say that this is an existing MOD. All right, there it is. Go to the next tooth, and I'll do the same thing with the posterior composite, and it's an MOD. No difference in the way that it looks. Now, guess what? If they're existing restorations and they're fine, why do we care if it's composite or amalgam and the patient sitting in the chair? We know what it is. So the difference would be is if that composite or amalgam is failing. So let's just take this composite and edit the composite and say that the composite itself is defective, which is one of the most overlooked options that there is in Eaglesoft.
And what does that say, just so everybody knows?
It says work is defective.
Okay.
So that means that the composite, and I just actually had this done, the composite that I had is 10 years old. It was flaking and it was coming apart. No new decay, but the actual composite was defective. So I'm going to say that work is defective. And now look at the difference. Now it means something, and now I can say, let's replace that composite with an MOD composite. And now it looks different. All right, let me turn my ledger on, and you can see down here in my ledger that when I charted it, so when I went into the doctor's office and he charted it, he said, Andre, you've got an MOD that's defective. And now in the ledger, it tells me that it's a defective, and he's replacing it with an MOD. No new decay, thankfully. So that's the way it should look. Now, let's look at a PFM. And this is the way Eaglesoft would propose a PFM, as opposed to proposing a all-ceramic crown. And this is where the custom draw types make a big difference. So I'm going to propose it. And see the difference in the pixelated occlusal?
Yes.
So going from a PFM to an all-ceramic crown, that's where the charting starts to really come alive. And having these things look different.
And like I said, we migrated from Dentrix to Eaglesoft. No, nothing wrong with Dentrix. We just had our own personal reasons to doing that. I found that charting was the hardest part for people to get used to because it's not the same way, I think, in other software. Do you find the same thing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of like the battle between an Android phone and an iPhone. It's the one that you're used to. I always tease people when they say, oh, I don't like Eaglesoft, and I look at what phone they have, and I say, let me just take your phone, I'll give you mine, and tell me if you like it or not. It's a tough one.
Yeah, definitely. But this is, if you spend the time learning this, it's amazing, and it's super easy to be able to chart existing and then put together a treatment plan and have it ready for the patient. I mean, if your doctor, Andre, you and I are both on the same page. You need to go chartless. And I actually say paperless now, right? There's no reason not to. It's just the technology is there, but you really have to invest in the training because it's, if you don't train it, then people get afraid of it and then they don't do it and they just hold on to the charts. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I spent a decade working with Patterson, as a daily, day-to-day trainer in an office, and it was amazing that people would make this investment in the technology, and then they would offer their team 1 or 2 days to learn how to use it. And the gap in knowledge there is huge. I mean, I can't imagine, any doctor would say it's a good idea to take 2 days to learn dentistry. Yeah. And that's what we're doing. We're running, I tease all the time that dentistry is the only profession out there where you would have somebody who has absolutely no experience who runs $1 million business.
Right.
I came into this from the retail industry, and I was thrown into a front desk where I was running $1 million business with absolutely no experience.
Right, which is why I started Front Office Rocks, because of that problem right there. There's not access to it. I have a client or a doctor who he converted to Eaglesoft and didn't shut down clinically, only brought in a trainer up front, and they had a trainer for 2 days. And 6 months later, he told me that his team hated Eaglesoft. And I'm like, it's because you didn't give them the opportunity to actually learn it. This software is amazing, but you have to learn it, and you need to continue learning. So, you know what, when you first learn it, you're basic at it. But then in 6 months, bring a trainer in, watch some of these videos, to reach out to Andre, because now you're ready for the next level because the software should be helping you run your day-to-day all the time.
Yeah, and typically what happens is people will find workarounds that instead of using the software to its fullest, they're introducing other different things. They've got route sheets are coming back into vogue, which is it just scares me to see this. But there's a lot of stuff that people are doing in order to supplement something like this. If I open my chart, and for me, I don't use red to mean propose. I use green to mean propose. So immediately, if you look at this chart, there's not going to be any missed services. There's not going to be a missed treatment plan, because guess what? I can see immediately what's been referred out in my office, referred as brown, because it's crap I'm not going to do. So I can see brown. I know that stuff that's referred out. So this patient, Charles, we referred him out to have that wisdom tooth taken out. But guess what? It's never been done, because I can tell it's still in brown. I can tell he hasn't had this implant completed because, we proposed the implant, we referred it to Dr. Jones to get it done, and then we were going to do the custom abutment and crown on it, but he hasn't had it done yet. Because when it comes back, we know that there's, the front office is going to change that from a referred service to an existing service. So I can quickly look at my chart and tell what's going on. And utilizing this chart better, you really, really are using a practice management software instead of just a database.
Exactly. And getting everybody on the same page with your team. And like you were saying, if you can get the same way to the same or different ways to get to the same location, what I find a lot with Eaglesoft is I'll have somebody show me how to do something and they get to it a different way than I do. And I'm like, how'd you do that? So as long as you realize that there's multiple ways to get there, and there's people who are getting workarounds in your office, it'd be a good way to share it. We set our clinical and our front office team down together and just go over Eaglesoft once or twice a year, because we teach each other stuff, because there's so much to this and we don't realize that people have different workarounds.
Yep. And don't force anybody to change the way that they're getting there. As long as they're getting there, we're okay with it.
Yep. Some people are quicker. Some I go to lists. Some people like the picture. Some right click. Allow them all to get there. But the biggest thing is taking the time to continue your training with us. So we've kind of looked at chart. And again, I know everyone's probably like, show us more. And Andre has more resources, and we'll give you all of the how to reach us at the end. Let's jump over to the patient analysis report. And why don't you kind of go over that with us?
And the patient analysis report is one of those things, that I love. I mean, I'm a numbers guy. So if I go into my reports and I go down, I'm just going to hit my P and go to my patient analysis report. Now, I've got a phony database here, so it's not going to be as interesting as most people's are going to be. Let's enlarge that to 150%. A couple things that we want to look at here is I want to look at the male to female ratio. That's one of the first things I look at, and that's why it's in the upper left here. So if I look at that number and I look at, I hate to be a sexist and say this, but this number should be 60-40. It should be 60% female and 40% male. And again, this is not a real database. If it's anything different than 60 female, 40 male, usually what I look at is that the office has been entering dads as patients, and they're really just either responsible parties or policyholders. And that's just a red flag that you just automatically want to look at. The other thing you want to look at is, this percentage of patients with insurance, all right, no matter if you take insurance or not, if you're putting the employer into the system, this is going to tell you what your breakdown. This is the really important number. And again, this is a real office, but the number of patients who were in the last 12 months or 24 months will give you an idea of what your active patient base is versus what it says down here. Because I've only seen one person in the last 12 months, but I've got 72 active people, which means there's 71 people who don't like me very much,
Right.
So that's kind of why I look at this number.
And a lot of this is the reason I actually made some YouTube videos. Mine are real basic. I'm not in depth like you and detailed, but mine are just the basics of how to put new patients in, how to schedule. Because if you've got somebody new at the front desk and they don't understand the difference between a responsible party or family member or insured or not, one of the biggest things I see on your feed when we talk about Eaglesoft is how to clean up insurance plans and employers, because I mean, what do they say? I'm going to, swear, I guess, crap in is crap out.
Yep.
And if we're putting people in and we're saying they're patients, but they're really not, that's messing up your numbers. If you're saying they're active, but they haven't been in, if they have insurance and we're adding new insurance plans, next thing you know, you have 50 different versions of the exact same plan. And it just weighs down your, what you can get out of the software.
Yeah. And because of how long I've been doing this, a lot of the clients that I've originally worked with are now going through the transition phase where they're selling the practice, or they're finding value in the practice to transition. And looking at these numbers, if I'm seeing a patient base that's 50,000 patients, but really active patients are 1,200, it skews the numbers so bad that when you're looking at a true analysis report, you're not getting the data back that you really need. So,
right. And you have information of this kind of stuff on your group, right? So that, because how often do you recommend offices look at their numbers and kind of see where they are?
Well, hopefully they're doing it every morning at a huddle. They're looking at some of these numbers, and especially looking at attrition rates. But that's why I love, our good friends at Revenue Well, to be able to use systems like that, to use practice by numbers that are, looking into the data. Those are the kind of systems I like that, even if we don't have the time, which is usually what happens, we worked at the front desk, when we don't have time to do it, there's something that's triggering us to say, hey, take a look at this number or that number. So it should be a daily thing, but somebody has to kind of keep us in the light.
While you're on this, because I have a couple of questions that people have they want us to go over,
Sure.
But one of the things I love about Eaglesoft is I don't know if you remember the original pictures. You have your face there for the support frame. The original picture, she looked like Hillary Clinton. They've changed the pictures over time.
Yep.
So we joke in our office about ask Hillary. That's what we always say. One of the things that I find in dental offices is there's a lot of time wasted of me walking over to somebody else going, how do you do this? And then walking over to somebody else and going, I know there's a way to pull a report, and how do you do this? I love your group. Go on Facebook and ask questions, but I also love the live help and the different options they have there. So can you just show them how to get to that? Yeah,
so just click on your little picture frame and go to live help, and it will fire up a web browser and get you to a support page. And all you have to do is type a question, and they will type back an answer for you. It's one of the best features that there is.
And what I was going to say, what I do with that is if you ask a question, what we do in our practice, if you ask a question and somebody else is going to have that question, get the question answered, and then you can print the question and answer and three-ring binder, hole punch it, put it into a manual, or share it with everybody else on your team. Because if it's something you just figured out that the rest of the team needs to know, like I know a lot of people don't know that you can move docking stations around in schedule, share it with the rest of your team so that you're not the only one that learned something about Eaglesoft.
I agree. And again, that's where, a weekly, monthly meeting, you bring it up and you give somebody a tip that could, we could solve carpal tunnel in the dental practice,
Yep, definitely. And I think that if you can get live help right then, you can stay on your, work with your patients, be on the phone and get the answer you need. The other thing you mentioned is large screens versus smaller screens. Another tip, if you can talk to your doctor about this, if you don't have it, dual monitors. I mean, they're amazing. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I'm sitting here at my desk. I've got two 30-inch monitors on my desk, and that's the way I work. If I was back in the dental practice, I'd probably have the same thing.
Yeah. So just so everybody understands, a monitor does not cost that much. You don't have to add a new computer. Your doctors are probably all going to be mad at me after this, but you just go buy another monitor, and you then can leave the schedule up on the one screen, and you can open, a chart, or you can open insurance claims on your other screen. And when the phone rings, you still have the schedule open. When a patient walks in, you can still so you basically can be twice as productive having two screens up in front of you. Look at notes and check the schedule and do two things at once, which is really, really, really great. There you go, Kurt. There was your answer to the benefits of the dual monitor. Can you show us Money Finder?
Yeah. So Money Finder, a lot of the questions that come up on the Eaglesoft Field Guide are about how do I get a report about this or how to get a report about that. And I usually say, so what do you want to do with that information when you get it? And usually it's about doing recall or something like that. So for me, this tool, which is under Activities, Practice Management, and Money Finder, this is like one of my favorite tools. Usually as a consultant or as a coach, when I'm coming in an office, there's usually a gap that happens that they're calling me in for. And a lot of times what I'm doing is coming in saying, do me a favor, let's go to Money Finder and let's find some money, which sounds crass, but it's the case. So let's just go here and let's create a report, quote unquote. And let's say, look for everybody who has insurance, who is between 7 years old and 14 years old, right? Who lack a completed D1351, which is a sealant. And I'm going to look for everybody who has insurance, who's between 7 and 14 years old, who's never had a sealant, and let's create a list of those patients who we can call because it's almost Easter and they're going to be eating jelly beans and everything else, and let's get them in for sealants. So think about using this Money Finder for scenarios like that where we have some downtime and we're sort of data mining. Show me everybody who we've proposed, all right, so has a planned, and let's put in, say, whitening or something like that. And let's run a list of everybody who's had a planned whitening but never got it done. In some of my restorative offices, we run, show me everybody who had a molar root canal but never had a crown.
Yep.
All right.
So for this, I would definitely learn this. If you ever hear from your team members, there's nobody else to call.
Oh.
There's nobody else to call. I've called everybody. There's, that is not ever the case. There's always somebody to call. There's always, so to be able to take this and target the phone calls and say, all right, we have an opening in the doctor's schedule. Let's call everybody that needs a crown, and then use, like you said, Revenue Well or Practice by Numbers or one of the other outside softwares that help you. There's always somebody that you can reach out to try to help fill the schedule.
Yeah. And, one of the things I used to love doing with this is, especially for my doctors who were just getting into doing implants or, a lot of the doctors who are now doing all-in-fours, run a list of patients who had dentures made, especially lower dentures made, 5, 10 years ago, because more than likely they haven't been back to the practice other than maybe for an adjustment in that period of time. So you could run a list of everybody who had a lower denture made 5, 10 years ago and bring them back just to even have an open house on implant placement.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a great tool.
I'm getting a lot of people asking us to do another one of these because I think they love it, and to talk about different reports and stuff. So I think that we're gonna do a version 2 of this, Andre, and we're gonna get more focused into each one of these because I think people are liking this. Based off the time, the only other big question I think this is very helpful. Somebody asked about free time search and schedule. How do you search for that?
Honestly, here's my free time search. I only put it there because it's there. I never use it.
Me either. I'm glad we agree on that. I was going to wait to see what you said.
Good. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's because I've been using the software for so long. I know where my next opening is for an evening appointment. I know where my next 8 o'clock appointment is because I've worked at a practice for long enough to know those kind of things. So I can get to it quickly. Let's just say quicker than the computer can do it. So it's just like turning on your GPS to go to the local McDonald's. I mean, yes, it could tell you how to get there, but I can get there faster on my own.
Right.
So yeah, I never use it, honestly.
I find it just hard it's not useful for me. I agree. I would rather click through the days. I kind of know what days I have, and looking up at the top, like you said, the goals versus where we are scheduled, and doing it that way.
Yeah, and a perfect example is, now imagine I was doing an implant, and this space here is 2 hours, but I need 2 hours and 10 minutes. If I set this parameter for 2 hours and 10 minutes, it may have skipped this spot.
Right.
So yeah, I'm glad we agree. Also
on the appointment queue, somebody didn't ask this, but I want to just point this out. One of my frustrations being in the office is when you are moving an appointment, you cancel an appointment, you docked an appointment. If that appointment queue gets too long, it's just like quick fill. It's not worth anything. So I always train at the end of the day, that appointment queue, appointments there you need to do something with them. Don't leave it there, sitting there. And don't let your quick fill get so long that it's just a dumping zone.
My rule in quick fill is I only put 3 kinds of patients in quick fill. Somebody who comes to the desk who says, I don't have my schedule. Can I call you right back? that's an active patient, put them on quick fill. Somebody who the doctors walk up and say, hey, how come we haven't seen Laura? How come we haven't seen Andre? Can you give them a call? They can go on my quick fill as somebody who I'm working on. And those people who say, call me if you get something sooner, which that's a whole conversation we'll have another time, but those patients can go on quick fill. Those are the only 3 types of patients, because quick fill needs to be a quick fill list.
Exactly. It's where you go to quick fill. But the problem is, what I find is when you go to delete an appointment, if you don't read the pop-ups carefully, it automatically dumps them into quick fill no matter what you did. And then it becomes a dumping zone. And then it doesn't get worked and it's not used for what it needs to be, which we could probably do a whole hour just on that. The processes of moving appointments and what goes into quick fill, what doesn't, what do you do with the patients? Perfect. All right, so I'm going to take back control of the screen. I promised an hour because I don't want you guys away from your offices too long. Let me see if I can get this going again. I've had a lot of questions, which is great. We're going to continue. We're going to take all these questions and make sure that you get an answer to them. But I want to make sure that you guys know how to reach out to Andre. Now do you guys know why I love Andre? He's real. He works in the office. He doesn't give you the high level, you should be able to do this thing. He teaches you how to use in your office. So all you have to do is go on Facebook. All you have to do is search Andre's Eaglesoft Field Guide. Join it now. You're going to find that he's answered probably most of the questions you have already in the past. So search for questions. And then he's always, always willing to answer your questions. And he's going to answer it not just for you, but for everybody else who is following that question. And I tend to chime in there once in a while too. So it's one of my favorite groups on Facebook. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to how they can find you on Facebook?
No, honestly, Facebook has just become the best thing in the whole world. And now that I carry it around in my pocket all day long, anybody can always get me.
Yeah, I know that you're on there more than I am. For those that are not familiar with who I am or what we are Front Office Rocks. And basically what we do is we have online training that you can use in your office. And it's not specific about Eaglesoft, even though I use Eaglesoft in a lot of the videos. It is how to talk to the patients about paying, how to handle new patient phone calls, how to build a productive schedule, how to handle recares, everything that we do in the front office. I've been an office manager for quite a long time, and I understand what we do in the trenches of the front office. So it's $149 a month. There's no long-term contracts. There's videos, documents, policies, webinars. We put these webinars on there. I just did a webinar on a membership program last week. So both Andre and I want to be resources for you in your office. If you don't already, also like Front Office Rocks on social media, because I'm very active on social media. And Andre and I we know what it's like to be sitting at the front, trying to make the practice run well and not knowing how to get the software or the employees to do what you need to do. So we're definitely both here for you. All these questions did not get answered, but if you want to either go onto Andre's Facebook page and ask your question, or email us info@frontofficerocks.com, and I will either answer your question or we'll get Andre to answer your questions, because we know that there was a ton of questions. At the end of this, you're going to get a survey. And in the survey, you have a spot to say, what else would you like to have us do a webinar on? If you loved this and you really want to dig deep into different aspects of Eaglesoft, let us know what you want to know about. And if we hear from enough of you on a subject, I think Andre and I could tear apart Eaglesoft together and it would be a lot of fun. So are you up for that, Andre, if we want to do that?
Anytime.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for joining us. You have an event coming up soon, correct?
Yeah, it's a huge event. It's May 18th in Philadelphia, my hometown, the Eaglesoft Field Guide live event. And it's going to be the first of hopefully an annual event.
Perfect. And I have one coming up in Boston on April 6th, and it's Front Office Rocks all day long. We're going to talk about everything from that first appointment through asking for a final review from the patients. I do 4 events around the country around the year. So if you go to frontofficerocks.com and you go to the live events on the top, you can learn more information. And at the end of this, we'll link you to a customer service guide, because we want to be your resource. So thank you, Andre, for joining us today. Good luck with the weather that's coming to the East Coast.
It's snowing already.
Oh boy, there you go. Well, I'm in San Diego, so I'm going to go out and enjoy the sun. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll have you guys back on the next version 2 of Front Office Rocks and Andre's Eaglesoft Field Guide. So thank you guys all for joining us. Thank you, Andre, and everybody have a nice day.